City Radio, in your ear. GC Radio, in your ear. Garden City Radio, in your ear. GC Radio, in your ear. Garden City Radio, in your ear. GC Radio, in your ear.
There's no shortcut to changing society, to bringing about change. So people should stay focused, citizens should stay determined.
We can continue to ensure that we have a corrupt-free society by being active citizens, and this is what NIDEN is campaigning for, that citizens are active and rise up to the challenge.
That is a major problem, that the money dedicated to the education sector is simply not enough.
Tired of persistent corruption? Would you like to take a stand on corrupt practices? Then join us on Half an Hour with NIDEN by 1 p.m. every Tuesday on this station.
The fight against corruption must be from the bottom to the top. We need citizens involved in the fight.
And it's another Tuesday. Welcome to the Anti-Corruption Network program, NIDEN. We're on it Tuesday, the 18th of November 2014. You're welcome to the program for today. And today on the program, we'll be looking at procurement laws, the procurement law. Now, before we go into details and before I introduce our guest for the program today, recently the Nigerian government or the federal government urged state governments to conclude a process of replicating and enacting their own procurement laws. Now, the public procurement reform program began at the federal level more than 14 years ago, and this actually accumulated into passage of the Public Procurement Act in 2007 as part of government efforts to streamline the process. And now, speaking at the first national conference on public procurement organized by the Bureau for Public Procurement, BPP. Now, President Goodluck Jonathan, who was represented by the Vice President Namadi Sambo, noted that a regulatory body cannot be effective except it is backed by law, and so therefore it was passed on in 2007. Now, he went on to say that I want to call, and I want to quote it, I want to call on state governors to protect the regulatory authorities for them to be independent the way I have protected the Federal Bureau for Public Procurement. Now, the president also stressed that the implementation of the procurement reforms goes beyond passage of laws. And currently, only about, the federal government calling on states to bring this law into form. Now, before we go on and on and on, it's also noted that the federal government said it's recorded over success from 2009 to 2013 fiscal year, a success of 588 billion naira saved from prior use of BPP before the award of contract by Federal Executive Council. Now, we're moving on to this. The subject for today's discussion is on the procurement laws as it regards states and also as it regards citizens participating in these laws, in knowing what goes on in the agencies that abide by these laws. And today in the studio, joining me for this discussion on anti-corruption 45 minutes, I have Mr. George Hill Anthony. He is a former national chairman, Coalition for Accountability and Transparency in Extractive Industries, Forestry and Fisheries in Nigeria. Is former South Board representative of the defunct ANCOR under the EFCC. Now, he's also the former head Civil Society Steering Committee, NEIT, and he's also a member of NIDEN and executive director of Niger Delta Budget Monitoring Group. He's an expert on the subject matter, and he's going to take us through this one. You're welcome to today's program, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in. And before we go on, most of our listeners might be wondering what we're talking about. So a little bit of education on the subject matter, procurement law. What is procurement law? What is the procurement law that we're talking about?
Okay, thank you for having me in your studio.
You're welcome.
First of all, when we talk about procurement law, we are talking about due process.
Okay.
And the due process we are talking about is not generalized due process. Now we narrow it down to public procurement. And why do we call it public procurement? Because public funds belong to all of us. Those who are running government are running it on our behalf. If you want to spend your own private money, it can be called your private funds. So spend it according to your pocket. Okay. But for public funds, there must be a template, a legal framework that guides how public funds should be spent. Based on that, the federal government conceptualized a legal framework through a bill to the National Assembly that was passed in 2007 for it to become a law called the Public Procurement Act. That law regulates how the federal government should actually spend public money, be it on construction, supply, consultancy, or whatever, as it has to do with service delivery.
Okay.
When it has to affect the life of Nigerians. And as we speak, about either 21 or 22 of the states in the Federation have also domesticated that law in their federal state, including some states in the Niger Delta area.
Okay. Now, speaking of the law, how is this law applied? Like the process, what's the process for this law? How is it applied? How is it put in force? Is that something like an agency that controls it?
Yes. Actually, at the federal level, also at the state level,
state levels,
yes,
federal level.
Yes, structures are put in place to control how monies are spent. For example, you saw construction going on the road. There must have been a due process in terms of certification, as to be able to certify or to concur or to accept that procurement process has been able to pass through a template in terms of saying a procurement template before the final award. At the federal level, yes, it's also the same thing, and it was put in place to have value for money. So before you say construction, before you say supply, it is assumed that it must have passed through due process. So yes, there is a board, there is an entity that oversees how this whole process is carried out, and that is in place mostly at the federal and some state government level.
Okay, you said something earlier. You set up something over 20, 23 years.
Yeah, about 21 or 22.
Yeah.
Cannot be sure, but it's between 21 and 22.
Okay. The states that have domesticated
Yes.
these procurement laws
Yes.
now. In your opinion, what is the extent of the procurement laws that have been applied across the states today? In your opinion, is it something you say it's okay on a scale? Let's put it on a scale of 1 to 100 and 1 to 10. What would you say? It's your opinion the extent of the procurement law being applied in states around?
In terms of putting it a generalized equilibrium, I would not be able to say that when it has to do with the Nigeria as a whole. But let us narrow it down to the south.
In compliance, okay.
Yes.
In this region.
Yes, in this region.
Are they in compliance?
Yes. For this region, 5 states have this law. I want to avoid the word compliance because having the law does not necessarily mean the states are in compliance.
Okay.
The quarrel we have in the civil society about the passage of this law is that these laws have been passed, but it has not been fully tested.
Okay.
In terms of citizens' engagement on the quality of these laws, when it has to do with the value for money.
The value for money.
Yes, in terms of the value for service delivery. But for the South-South zone, I can say categorically that 5 states have passed this law, except Akwa Ibom. Only Akwa Ibom do not have a public procurement law in place as we speak.
Okay. Only Akwa Ibom State,
yes, for the
South-South zone,
yes,
do not have these laws. You said something about citizens getting involved.
Yes.
In the process.
Yes.
Getting involved in the process. Now, in your opinion, they are not really carried along.
Yes, I think those of us who are in the civil society, we are not comfortable with the fact that the citizens are not carried along, like it happens in Philippines. If you go to Philippines, before a procurement process is carried out, the community, the end users are involved from the conceptualization stage. Okay. In this part of the world, we call it need assessment in the civil society. Okay. Government also know about this. You need to consult the people. For example, some governors go about town hall meetings, which also can be interpreted to be need assessment, to ask the people, what do you want?
What do you want?
Yes.
Okay.
But it shouldn't actually stop there at the stage of asking the citizens, what do you want? The citizens should actually be integrated, be carried along in the procurement process for them to be able to measure the value for money in terms of how their money is being spent.
Has been spent, okay.
Yeah, in terms of the quality of the contractors, in terms of the quality of the services, in terms of measuring the duration of their project, whether it's going to meet best practices or not. And perhaps there are provisions in the law which is supposed to be people friendly. For example, the constitution of the board of the various due process units. Yes, that composition is supposed to have representative either from the civil society or from the communities.
Okay.
So we have in some states where there are provision for civil society or citizens representative provided have expertise. Maybe perhaps if we have time,
okay,
I will broaden on that.
All right.
In some other states, none of such. And so we think there is need for the state that have passed this law to perhaps go with an amendment to the state houses of assembly for the laws to be citizens friendly, or for those that have not tested this law, let them test this law in order to feel the pulse of the citizenry, which should guide further in terms of being able to measure if the law is pro people or anti people.
Anti-people. Okay. So looking at the civil society now, I want to ask a question. How can civil society enforce compliance to the procurement process?
That is a very sensitive and broad question. How that compliance can be enforced, for example, is through the representative of the civil society.
There must be a representative.
Yes. And if we narrow it down to our federal states within the zone, for example, here in Rivers State, Part 1, Section 3 of the State Public Procurement Law make provisions for membership in the Due Process Board. And there is no direct provision to say members of community should come and be members of that board. There's no such. But in Part 1, Section 3, subsection C of the law states 7 other members, 4 of whom shall be experts in procurement law, management, and engineering. That means that the state government foresaw the need to create a room to appoint people who have expertise in this
procurement law.
Yes, to be members of that board.
Yeah.
As we speak, I cannot categorically say that I know anybody within the civil society who is a member. Yes. Now, it's through such membership that we can demand accountability from our representative in the board to say, look, are you sure the procurement processes meets best practices? What is going on there? Come and give us what we call constituency accountability. By that, we can be able to put pressure on our representative to be able to do the right thing by being able to make input within the board to make sure that there are value for money within the procurement process.
Okay, you said something about not knowing anyone who is currently
within the civil society.
Within the civil society,
yes.
That says that if the civil society are not totally involved within this process, it means the citizenry as well cannot follow the process. And then my question now is it that there is no need for citizens to follow this process, to be carried along on this procurement laws, to be carried along on this laws, and knowing what government is doing with their money, state governments are doing with their monies, how they're spending it. Is it that there's no need? That is why we have this what do you call it? What should I say now? This miscommunication between the government and the people.
I think government have realized the fact that there is need for the people to be part. That I can say by making efforts to make disclosures. You may be very conversant with the fact that some state governments within the Niger Delta area actually reel out videos that is allocated to the states from the federation account.
Okay.
And also, you are also very aware that one or two of our governors within the zone, when they go for town hall meetings, they are able to mention names of contractors for ferrous projects that affects the people directly.
Okay.
But what we are saying yes, thank you, Mr. Governors. We are demanding for, we are not olifactories within the civil society, but we are demanding for more. To say, before the actual award of this contract, before some people abscond with government money, before some people abandon government contract, why not initiate a process before you award this contract? For example, if you see that a project is going to cut across 5 communities or 10 communities, call them within the bidding process. Let them come and observe. Let them come and monitor how this award process is carried out. For example, if they say there is no structure in terms of inviting every member of the public, that there's going to be chaos, we disagree with that. Because within the communities there are CDCs. Yes, within the communities there are youth groups, there are women groups. Invite them formally. Let them send their representative to sit down and actually observe, if you don't want them to monitor, the process that will lead to the award of this contract. By that, they will know the contractor, they will know the amount, they will know that the contractor cannot play on their intelligence. So even before the contractor will report to site, the committee already must have been aware in terms of the cost template before that contract is awarded. And by that process, they will not harass the contractor. They will not demand for machine ground. They will not say, look, you have to employ our youth and all that, even if it is within their democratic right to demand for employment, because already they will see that they were part. So they understand the whole process, both bill of quantity, both in terms of the number of goods and services to be delivered and all that. And by then they will have a sense of belonging. If the contractors want to cut corners, they will say, no, we were here, we were there when this contract was awarded. Therefore, do this job within the best practices, based on what we know as the contract was awarded. And that is what that's all that we are advocating for. Okay. And it's for the benefit of the general public, even for those who are in government that will leave government tomorrow. Okay. We don't want people to leave government tomorrow and they will start complaining. What did they do when they were in government? We have to put a system in place that anybody who is in government, when you come out, those who goes in after you can be held accountable for the general good of the entire citizenry.
Now, you said something about a few states who have, we have 5 states here in the Niger Delta, in the South-South, let me use that, South-South, that you said, that are currently, they've indigenized this procurement laws into their systems. And looking at it, what about the other states that haven't? What do you think might be the reason why this hasn't been put into the governmental system in the states?
I think before I go directly to answer your question, let me mention the years and the period that this law came into force in the federal state. For example, in our own state here, Rivers State, the law was signed by His Excellency the Honorable Governor of the state, Right Honorable Chubike Rotimi Amechi, on the 3rd of May 2008. For Bayelsa State, the law was signed by former Governor Timi Presilva on the 17th of June 2009. And for Cross River State, the law was signed on the 30th of December 2011. That of Edo State was signed by the Comrade Governor in 2012. And if you look at all this, I want to say that yes, it can be assumed that government have the interest of the people at heart before these laws were domesticated.
Yes.
But for the state that do not have this law, like Akwa Ibom, we have said no, upon the fact that some people are carried away by what they see on the street in terms of social infrastructure. It could be questionable when there is no procurement template in place to measure value for money. So therefore, we have said that Akwa Ibom, for example, should pass the public procurement bill, and sadly there's no bill even in the State House of Assembly, and passing a public procurement law is not even an answer to the management of public resources. There's another sister legislation which should go hand in hand with the public procurement law, and that is the Fiscal Responsibility Act. We should also go along with the public procurement law. So we are saying, give us a public procurement law and also give us a fiscal responsibility law which we can use to hold governments accountable and be able to further a democratic experiment in terms of holding government accountable.
So there is most of the states that do not have it. It's citizens cannot hold government accountable because there's no provision for such. So violators of these laws can really not be persecuted because there's really no law.
They can, but it's a whole lot of processes to hold those who are in violation of this law accountable. For example, at the federal level, you have to send a letter of protest to the accounting officer of a particular MDA who were responsible for that particular public procurement that you may have observed or witnessed infraction or abuse of the law. And after that, if they do not act within 21 days, you can now write to the umpire, being the Bureau of Public Procurement. Now you write to the Bureau and you wait within 15 days to get a feedback. If you are not satisfied, you can now take the matter to the Federal High Court. Now, you know, it is a whole lot of processes that if people know, what I mean, if people know that if you go contrary to if you abuse the law, that the citizens will hold you accountable, indirectly or directly, by knowing who you are. Without pretending they know you have embezzled their money. We know you are well, they will know you are well. The big cars you drive, the big mansions you have, may have been from their money you cornered. That is the aspect of holding citizens, holding government accountable in terms of those who are directly involved with service delivery. Now, like in Rivers State or some other state within the region, there are processes to hold those who have gone contrary to the law accountable. But such processes, like in Rivers State, there is room for arbitration, where they could say, can we discuss this and use ADR to see how to resolve the issue. Yes, where that fell, you can now use what is enshrined in the law in terms of demanding for accountability, either from the government side or from the contractor side.
You can join the program. You can join the conversation. You can send a text message to us. You have a question, a contribution. Well, the numbers to send your SMS is to 090-948-64034. I repeat the numbers, 090-948-64034. And you can also call in to the studio and on 080-928-95620. The number to call in, 080-928-95620. And also 0811-320-5154. 0811-320-5154. The numbers to call. You have any questions or contributions to add on to the program, you can. We've been talking to Mr. George Hill Anthony. He is a member of NIDEN and Executive Director, Niger Delta Budget Monitoring Group. We've been talking about the public procurement law and looking into it, how states can, according to what the federal government said, states are not, some states don't have these laws embedded into their governmental system, while some states do have it. But we're looking at how citizens, how the civil society can participate or can be carried along in the process that has to do with the procurement law. Now that brings me to the next question. How can citizens really, how can they join in and participate into this monitoring of the process of what goes on from the bidding of the contract when it starts, and who the contract is being awarded to, straight up to when the contract or anything, when the contract has been enforced or carried on or implemented? How can citizens be carried along in this process?
You may be aware that there's that popular opinion that at the time our governor here actually was going about monitoring project by himself.
Okay. Yeah.
Why was he doing that? He was doing that because he wanted value for money. He wanted to a situation where the projects can meet specification. But beyond that, the citizens can partake. For example, at every project I see, I will look for the labeling. What do I mean by that? Every capital project is supposed to be branded. It's supposed to be labeled.
Okay. With the companies.
Yes, you will see the name of the company doing that job. You will see the name of the consultants who is to supervise that job. You will see the address. All the details is spelled out.
Okay.
It is within every citizen's democratic right to approach the company if you have any question. Be civil. To say, oh, we see you see your company doing this contract. Thank you, is for our own collective good. Why is the contract failing?
Okay.
When you have not even reached, for example, a 10-kilometer road, you have gone 5 kilometers, and maybe to 1 kilometer is already failing. What is happening? Why is it like this? And can we know the cost for this project? If they refuse to tell you the cost, you can approach the ministry.
Really?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can. You can approach the ministry to say, well,
no tedious, tedious paperwork to do that.
You can. Yes. Now, what will happen when you go to the ministry is that the commissioner or the PEMSEC will direct you to what they call PRS. PRS is a unit.
Okay.
In every agency of government, either a ministry that has to do with procurement, research, and statistics or whatever.
Okay.
Now, it is there that they will tell you, yes, so we are actually aware of that contract. This is the amount for the contract. This is the contractor that is doing the job. Oh, do you have any observations and all that? Are you with me?
Yes.
But if you are not civil, if you want to bully them, yes, they may not be